Just wanted to briefly go over the paper that we just published on a large data set of couples who came into our laboratory. The title and journal information is presented here on the slide, but I'll also put a direct link so you can grab the PDF if you want to review it further or in more detail. So this is a paper led by Dr. Greg Siegle, University of Pittsburgh, and myself. And we had 250 people or 125 couples come into our laboratory, and it was a mobile laboratory, so the data were collected in Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco. These were experienced practitioners of orgasmic meditation. Orgasmic meditation at its core includes 15 minutes of manual genital stroking that's very, very slow. The goal is neither to have a climax or a meditation per se, so it's a bit of a misnomer. That is, the intention is just to feel and to share this experience between two people. There's no reversal of roles, so that is the person receiving the stimulation needs to have a vulva. The person providing the stimulation could be of any gender persuasion, and it's uncommon for them to experience climax during this. And we recorded during that 15 minutes a number of different physiological indices. The one I'm going to focus on here is called galvanic skin response. Galvanic skin response broadly looks at the activity of eccrine glands that are most dense in the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet, most commonly measured in the hands, primarily accessibility, cleanliness, etc. And this is the device that we used. And we recorded the galvanic skin response in the person receiving the stimulation during that 15-minute interval. And what was most interesting to us about the data from that is there was quite a lot of variability. We assumed as an index of sympathetic nervous system activity that GSR would primarily increase over the course of those 15 minutes of stimulation, but we saw a tremendous amount of variability, and it's possible that that variability was just error variance. That is, perhaps we weren't receiving a real signal, and that is the case for some GSR signals. We know, for example, it doesn't pick up the signal as well in folks who aren't white, a very well-known problem with the galvanic skin response measure. And so part of the question of the paper is this real? How do we know, and what does that mean? So the lower right graph here kind of shows the variability and the mean change in the galvanic skin response during that 15 minutes. And what you'll notice is a somewhat normal distribution. That is, there seem to be a large number of folks who are kind of going up and a large number who are kind of going down, and some who don't change a whole lot. And so our question was, what might that be related to? So I conducted a time series cluster analysis that attempts to identify substantial trends in the shape over time of the galvanic skin response, and it identified 4 separate clusters. You can see the first 2 are the most common by far, and so the group 1 was the most common, so this blue line, that's actually a decrease in galvanic skin response during the 15 minutes of stimulation. The second most common, this group 2, the red line here, shows an increase over time in the stimulation. And then 3 and 4 were less common and basically represent more intense responses. So the third having a strong decrease over the course of the session, and the fourth having a strong increase throughout the course of the orgasmic meditation session. So the most common situations were a general decrease or a general increase, with the more extreme responses being less common but still distinguishable. And then we said, does that relate to people's experience? So we also asked them, how do you feel? And a variety of different emotions they could report before they started the orgasmic meditation, and then we asked them again after they completed the orgasmic meditation, and looked at how that related in a simple correlation to the galvanic skin response change. And here there are some that might stick out. So we looked at the change in the strokee primarily, that's the person receiving the stimulation, and see there's a relationship here with feeling amused, feeling aroused, and also experience of anxious or being turned on. So not every emotion showed a relationship with the galvanic skin response here, but a number did. And they're in the directions that you would expect in each of those emotional cases. And then if we look at the plots over time more generally to see, do these look linear? Some do, some don't, but they're in, again, the directions that you might expect. That is, we see that when galvanic skin response is going up, that's generally also an increase in the feelings of anger emotion. It's generally also an increase in the amused emotion. There doesn't seem to be as strong a relationship here with the happiness report. Relationship closeness is indexed, it seems, by the GSR change. And there may be a little bit more of a quadratic function here with feeling turned on per se. It's worth noting that turned on in the orgasmic meditation community means something a little different than sexually aroused, so it's worth also looking at that separately. And the sexually aroused also seems to have a generally positive linear, but somewhat curvilinear, possibly quadratic relationship there as well. So what does this mean? If these are meaningful relationships, that we can actually find differences in galvanic skin response that are not error variants? Well, one broad interpretation is that direct genital stimulation can cause physical excitation or relaxation, which in and of itself is, I think, pretty interesting. We generally assume genital touch is pretty directly sexual and should be excitatory, but we don't see that that's happening for everyone here. Some people seem to almost relax during this experience. More for the emotion neuroscientists, that is, high pleasant affect can occur without necessarily having concomitant physiological arousal. Some people, especially in that happiness domain, reported high happiness experience that wasn't necessarily accompanied by that galvanic skin response change, even though we have data to show the physiological change appears to be real. So it's not just error variance, it's not that we're not picking up on something accurately, but people really can have high experience of happiness without the occurrence of physiological arousal, and that's important for circumplex models of emotion that affective scientists often rely on. And I think it's interesting that even overtly sexual cues, that is, genital touching, may or may not always be understood as sexual per se. That is, it could be experienced as more connective and relaxing. And this is, as far as I know, the first evidence of that. This is the paper which I'll put a direct link to in the comments here, along with some time tags, and feel free to message if I can help clarify.